if I am going to look back at my career, and if I've been in healthcare, there's two things I'd love to influence. One of them is to bend the cost of healthcare.
That's like solving for world hunger, but okay.
Yeah, but we can all make a little contribution,
So
right?
true, so true.
And so you see the cost of healthcare rise consistently above the rate of inflation. And I thought to myself, if there's something that I can do with technology as a way to bend that curve, then I owe it to myself and the population that we service to help do that, right? So that's one aspect of it that drives me. And the second of it is make it less transactional.
Thank you for joining us for another episode of Navigating Technology with Zeal. I'm Rashmi Jain, Partner CIO at Zeal IT Consultants. It is my honor and privilege to present you with a new technology leader in every episode as we dig deep into the world of technology and gain collectively from the knowledge that these leaders have amassed over years of experience that they've gained in the industry. It was such a shame to hold that knowledge close to our heart as consultants when it could be shared on this wider audience portal. So thank you for joining us. In our studios today, we have a CIO, a thought leader, a technologist, Dallas CIO of the Year Orby Award winner for 2023 for large enterprises, someone that comes to the table with deep healthcare knowledge, years of experience in navigating the very complicated world of technology as it pertains to healthcare industry, Varun Gadhok. Varun, thank you for joining us.
Yeah, my pleasure. And that's how we met, actually.
And that's how we met. Yes, absolutely. From an award-winning CIO role to the person who actually rolls their sleeves up and gets it done. Share a little bit of your journey and how you got introduced to technology early on in your career, let's say when you were going to college, and how we are here today.
You know, I followed a very traditional path in that I was a big introvert when I was young. And so naturally, the idea of technology and being able to sit in a cubicle was something that I embraced at the time. And I wanted to be a techie. It's something that I enjoyed. And back then it wasn't cool, Rashmi. Like now it's cool to be a nerd.
Yeah.
Back then it was you're a nerd. And so I was going against the grain, but I really enjoyed the technology. I enjoyed the impact that it could make. And after college, I had an opportunity to go work for a fast-growing company based out of Kansas City called Cerner. They've been acquired since by Oracle. And I got into the electronic medical record space. So if you think about hospitals back then, most of them were on paper.
Yes.
Right. And there was a big push to from the government with incentives to push a lot of the paper going from the analog to the digital age.
Yes.
And this is what this company did. And so I joined an explosive company out of luck. I mean, I liked the culture. I wanted to be there. I knew I could make an impact, but I didn't pick healthcare at the time because it was healthcare. I just picked it because it was an opportunity.
It almost picked you.
Yeah,
Yes.
that's a good way to frame it. And they made products, right? So I did the product space for a few years, and I realized at some point I cannot be an introvert if I have ambitions to go into management and leadership, if I really want to influence change within healthcare.
Right.
And so I took a bit of a leap for me. It was scary, but I moved to Dallas and I took a role at Pro Systems, which has also since been acquired. They were acquired by Dell when I was there. Now they're owned by NTT Data. And they were a services company.
Mm-hmm.
And they asked me to come in and help with other healthcare clients that were looking for IT consulting, advisory, as well as just day-to-day management of their environment. That was the first time I've entered into an organization without a blueprint. You know, if you think about a product company, there's so much help, right? There's engineers, the manuals, there's all kinds of reference. Once you get into services, you got to use your creative ability and your network to go out there and figure things out. And so it was terrifying for me at the time, but I'm so glad I took that leap because what I realized is once I overcame that fear of being able to connect with people, I really started to enjoy it. And that's when I really started to thrive. So I spent about 5 years there. Tenet Healthcare, just down the street here, was one of my customers. And they asked me if I was interested in an opportunity to come to the provider side. Before that, I'd only been with IT firms on the product services. And I thought, well, it would be interesting to see how decisions are made. What are the real challenges on the strategy side. How are they thinking
Mm-hmm.
around all the change that's taking place in the universe? Because when you're on the delivery side, you maybe see parts of it, but you
Right.
don't always know why did they do things the way that they did. And so I took that jump, spent about 9 years at Tenet, worked for 3 different CIOs, have a lot of respect for the organization, and I was fortunate to do virtually all aspects of IT over that 9 years. So I didn't stay siloed within one aspect of IT. It was every few years I went and did something different.
Right.
After about 9 years, I had an opportunity to go to the outpatient space. So Tenet Healthcare primarily at the time was inpatient. And I thought, well, if I'm going to do something different, I want to still build off of what I've learned, but I want to expand my horizon and do something a little bit different.
Right.
And so I joined an organization called Surgery Partners. I spent almost 4 years there. And as of 4 to 6 weeks ago, I'm a free agent. So I left the
Might I say
organization. Yeah,
congratulations?
thank you, thank you. And so I left the organization a little bit ago. Tremendous learning opportunity for me. Love the people. Wish all the people well. Still left on great terms, and I'm just excited to be here and really discovering myself and figure out what I want to be. And there's so many opportunities, and so I can't be. I am so blessed to be in the position that I'm in. And one of the things I've realized just over time is just how important the role of the family is
Right.
over time too. So you've met my wife. She is a pillar
Wonderful.
in
Yeah.
our family, and I've got a beautiful 10-year-old. And so I love this extra time that I have to really kind of spend time and do
Right.
things that we wouldn't ordinarily get to do.
Absolutely. So many good pieces of nuggets there from information. My head is spinning with questions. So I'll backtrack to one of your statements first, and then we'll just take it from there. You said you were an introvert
Uh-huh.
and you wanted to hide behind a desk in a cubicle, and that's what led you to choosing IT as a career, right? But then it seems like you had this inherent curiosity because every move that you described, you talked about how you wanted to learn how decisions were made, how things are done outpatient. So looking at our young generation up and coming out there, looking for a career in IT, there's a lot of people that choose IT because they want to be behind a desk and they just want to be doers. To grow in the career of technology, what are some advice from your own personal experiences and having been that person, then also shifting to the other side? How do you advise our younger generation?
Yeah. One of the things I think you have an advantage of when you're young is you can take risk.
So
You
true.
have less to lose, right? I was okay with sleeping on a couch if I wasn't successful because there was nobody else that depended on me
Right.
at the time, right? So I would say take risk. If you have this curiosity and this itch and you feel stuck, this is the time to take that risk. The time to take risk diminishes over time when you have other people that impact your decision making. So I would think about what you really love to do
Right.
and see if there's a way to monetize that to be able to have a fulfilling career. And that involves risks.
Right. And luckily for technology, you could be on either side of the fence. You could be a people person and grow into a more management role, or you could be totally an introvert and be a core technologist.
Totally.
So there's a place for
There-
everybody in tech.
there's no one size fits all, and there's no right or wrong answer. It's what drives you.
Right. Did you have a crossroad in your career at a point where you had to decide if you wanted to be a core technologist or go more people management, which is the direction you took?
Yeah, it was really when I jumped ship from Perot to Tenet. So Perot, again, IT services company, what they really valued was intellectual property, right? How being a technologist was the value that I brought.
Right.
And I knew that if I doubled down within that element of it, I was going deeper and deeper into a vertical, and it would make it more difficult and challenging to transition at a later point in my
Right.
career. So again, I took that risk and that leap, and it's scary because you don't know how it's going to unwind, right? But sometimes those dead ends are the best things that ever happened to you.
Isn't that so true?
So,
We look at them as dead ends,
Yeah,
but they're
yeah.
really beginnings.
It validates for you that that curiosity has now been met, and it's not for me, and it redirects you in where you're meant to be.
Right.
And one of the things I did, the other element of it when I was younger, is I did 3 internships, and each one of them I learned I love the people, I love the organization and mission. It's not for me. And so early on, again, if you're taking those risks, sometimes those failures are some of the best things that can ever happen to you.
Right. So true. So true. Now, what an extensive career, all focused in healthcare, which is amazing,
Yeah.
right? Because in technology, we normally skip industries. We're not tied down to an industry,
Yeah.
which is the beauty of being in tech. But because your experience is over healthcare, what has your observation been from where healthcare was when you first started to where healthcare technologies are today?
Yeah. It's a double-edged sword because I think in some ways healthcare is still so far behind, right? They still use fax machines as an example, right? So if you're a young person graduating out of college, you've probably never seen one in a physician's office, but there are still some that depend on that.
Right.
On the other hand, you have disruption taking place with artificial intelligence that
Yes.
can be a tool to really advance some areas forward. And you see that, especially within the outpatient space. So being able to document our interaction as a physician and a patient in a much more efficient manner, and being able to, instead of having the physician or a scribe take those notes, being able to do that digitally and then having to just review that and sign off is a huge efficiency gain, right? And they are so advanced, Rashmi, even really complicated vocabulary, it picks up and it does it within context. And so you see these huge opportunities that make you really opportunistic. And then you see just the level of technical debt that is within the provider side and just some of the legacy technologies that they still depend on. And so I think it's a tale of two stories. And I would just encourage organizations that are finding themselves conflicted to just say, this is where the future is and where it's going. And so you just can't take your eye off the ball. But it's also, I think, challenging for some organizations to say, where do we make our bets? Because it's so exponentially changing with artificial intelligence. Is this the right time, or do we wait for it to mature a little bit? And that comes down to your culture. That comes down to, do you have are you a private equity backed 2-year plan, or are you a long-term mission faith-based that's been around and you're going to continue to be around, and your risk tolerance?
So true. We see that a lot in the industry. We see the two realities, the reality of where your org is and the reality of where the tech space is kind of colliding with each other. So from what I hear from you, I think what you beautifully describe is sort of a roadmap. Don't lose sight of the end goal. What's a good exercise as a beginning point of starting that roadmap? And then also, we all know, budgets come in, then board directives come in, priorities shift. How do you stay true to that path?
Yeah, one of the things I learned as a CIO, especially if you're in a mid or a large size organization, is there are so many things that are pulling at you, right? And so it's really hard to make focus.
Right.
And one of the things I did was I brought in partners to help me in the areas that I knew were important, but maybe not part of a strategic element of what we were doing. But that was part of their strategy. And so we brought in partners within IT to help with that. That allowed me to focus on the things around where's the industry going? What role do we want to play within? And there's all kinds of resources available in our digital age, right? From podcasts to YouTube to great books. You can take classes, go to conferences. And so you get a pretty good sense of what is really emerging and what has to make critical mass. And of course, you have lots of academic studies through your Gartners that tell you, the maturity of different solutions. And then it's from there, it's creating a business case. And I'm okay with an organization. And my philosophy was always, I'm okay as a CIO of an organization choosing not to invest, but I have informed them of the trade-offs, the pros and cons. And now we made a conscious decision. And the flip side is also true, right?
Right, so true.
But what I wouldn't want to do as an IT professional is not inform the stakeholders of the art of the possible, and then we get left behind, or we don't take the calculated risks and bet. So I saw my role was to be an advisor and really make sure that we make informed decisions. And I didn't have a bias towards we got to get the new shiny tool, or we just stay as is. And of course, culture is a big part of this too, because everything you do impacts people, going back to our point.
We have a saying here at Zeal that culture eats strategy for breakfast. And that holds true in a lot of my strategy colleagues would not quite agree with that, but I think it holds so true because in what you just said, right? I think a lot of leaders get lost along the way, and you're talking about strong people, but then when you're within the confines and the guardrails of your organization, you have this mental dialogue going, right? Oh, we never have enough budget, so why present? And I think that's where things get lost in the shuffle. So I think your thought leadership balances everything equally to where you say, this is what we're capable of doing, this is where we're at, let's make a collective decision, not just from a technology or just from a business standpoint, but together. So I feel that strength as a leader, you can't practice that or grow into it. That's something that's inherent as a leader that you have.
Yeah, and I think as CIOs, we're business people first, right? You have to think like a business. If you think like a technologist, you're not going to be successful at a leadership role because they think this much about technology. They think about growing the business. They think about their customers. They think about their mission.
So
And you
true.
have to contextualize the technology in that element of it. And in order to do that, you need to be a businessman first.
And that is so
Yeah, yeah,
critical.
yeah.
So talking back about AI now, because none of us can escape the topic of AI, right? When we look at healthcare, can you give us some examples of some really cool AI tech that you were exposed to in your experience in healthcare?
Yeah, so the one that I mentioned around ambient listening is one that I think most of the audience can relate to because it's something we've all had a physician example at some point in our lives, and I remember going into the physician's office and I would always wonder like, did they actually capture everything that I said? Because
Right.
sometimes you get to spend like
Yes.
2 minutes with a physician, right?
Right.
And I have this like big list of things that I want to cover, and so I think those can be a game changer for your outpatient physician offices. The other example I think about artificial intelligence is so much of it is probability based, right? It's predicting the outcome. It's
Right.
not perfect. It's not going to be black and white. And it's only as good as the way you train it. But if I think about if you are a large organization, let's say with lots of scheduling across the country, right? Um, in some cases for scheduling, let's say you're scheduling for surgery, you have a whole host of things you got to do day before. You can't eat, maybe you got to take certain medications, follow these procedures. And so what I see within AI taking place in the early stages, but it's taking place, is the ability to predict, well, who's going to not show up and
Right.
why. Is it
Interesting.
a financial issue? Is it a proximity issue? What if we offered them a ride? And so then you start getting into why, and then you start to capture those episodes, and then you make your training model better as a result of it, right? But
Right.
what that does is not only drive additional revenue because that's one empty seat that you had planned that is now going unfulfilled, but it also helps make sure you see you're better able to take care of the community that you serve because oftentimes there's wait lists for these things, right? And so it's a shame when you see someone waiting for weeks to go do something when there's an empty seat because of a no-show. And so there's a revenue element of it, but there's also a contribution towards your population
So true.
element of it that I think AI can help with.
So it's balancing the people aspect, like you said before,
Yeah.
along with the tech aspect, making the org more efficient, but then at the same time enhancing customer
Yeah,
experience.
totally.
That is so cool. So looking at your career again, I'm sorry, I'm so impressed with your extensive healthcare background. I have a healthcare background myself, so I immediately zero in on that. What was along the years, what drove you? What was your true,
Yeah.
like, this is what you love to do? And if you were to, as you had mentioned earlier, you're in transition,
Yeah.
what would be your ideal next role?
Yeah. One of the things I did is I went back to grad school in 2018. I was a class of 2020, so our last semester went virtual, but it left a very memorable impression on me. We had one class, it was called C-Suite Management, and they gave us a framework around leadership. And I always thought this way, but I never had a framework to work off of. And that's been really impactful for me and something that I use often when I evaluate talent, when I think about what drives me. They talked about three things. One of them is as a leader, you have to have the ability to influence people.
Yes.
Even if you're the CEO, you're influencing people. You're rarely making decisions in isolation, right? And you can work on that. That's something you can always improve. You're making decisions. Even if you don't know the right answer, you surround yourself with advisors. So again,
Right.
something that you can work on and is within everyone's control. The third is drive.
Mhm.
You either have it or you
You don't.
don't.
Yeah.
And studies have shown by the time you're 16, if you don't have it, it's really hard to artificially create drive. Now, it happens to some people, say they lose a family member or some event happens in their lives that causes them to rethink things. So
Right.
it does happen. But I look for people that have drive. And when I started evaluating talent that way, it also allowed me to have some introspection on myself to say, what drives me? So I find myself asking that question because
Yes.
I'm driven, but what is it that's
Yes.
driving me?
It's like an existential question, right?
Because you
Yes.
want something more macro than
Yes.
work, right? And I found myself thinking, if I am going to look back at my career and if I've been in healthcare, there's two things I'd love to influence. One of them is to bend the cost of healthcare.
That's like solving for world hunger, but okay.
Yeah, but we can all make a little contribution,
So true.
right?
So true.
And healthcare is a unique industry in that the market demand is not organic. So you don't have the supply and demand, say, between a retailer or a services company that just naturally finds that equilibrium. You have three players. You've got your payer, it could be the government, it could be commercial insurance, you've got your provider, and you've got your patients. And so the market efficiency just isn't there like it would be in a more simplistic environment. There's no right or wrong answer. It's just the way that it is. And so you see the cost of healthcare rise consistently above the rate of inflation. And I thought to myself, if there's something that I can do with technology as a way to bend that curve, then I owe it to myself and the population that we service to help do that, right? So that's one aspect of it that drives me. And the second of it is make it less transactional. I have a family member that went through a pretty significant surgery about 5 years ago. And I saw how transactional that was.
Right.
You know, you would go in, you would see this physician, you go for a second opinion, they want to do their own sets of orders and labs and imaging, and you get this opinion, you have the actual procedure, and then they are not always aware of um, the prerequisites, pre-existing conditions, even though you fill out all the mountains of paperwork to go provide that information. And I found myself as a family member really having to provide a level of oversight to make sure that things got done that way they're supposed to. I couldn't naturally depend on the system to just do that organically. And fortunately, you know, we have the means. I have family members that are healthcare providers. And so we had a lot of experts around here so we could identify those gaps and mitigate them. But that's not always the case.
Yes, right.
And so I said, that's the second mission that I have. To the degree that I can help with, I want to make healthcare less transactional
And more affordable.
and more affordable.
I don't want to be giving any spoiler alerts, but if I had a predictive model, I see a startup in the making, is what I see.
It's crossed my mind.
Yeah.
But you know, going back to your question about what is it that I want to do, I only work for large organizations that have to be all things to all people, right?
Right.
You could walk in with a toothache to a cardiac arrest and anything in between. And so as a result, as a CIO, you never get to dive deep into any of the modalities within healthcare. And so if I could pick my ideal next step, and I'm still thinking this through, this going back to our earlier conversation about so many opportunities out
Right.
there, I would love to have something that I can really wrap my hands around within healthcare. So maybe a specific area, you know, diabetes, cardiology, anesthesiology, whatever that is, something along those lines where I could really kind of go a little bit deeper and
Right.
use what I've learned from people, process, how to scale companies, how to make it sustainable. But that allows me to get a little bit deeper into the business side and really make a bigger impact in a way that really resonates with me instead of being a generalist.
Right. That's such good insight there. Very insightful. Thank you for that. Now, going back to your very original comments, you spoke very fondly of your family, and I think I was exposed to it for the first time. Take a guess. At the Orby Awards in 2023 when you got up on the stage to accept that award. And it was the most beautiful expression on, I think your son was 8 at the time. He was there. What was that experience like for you? What prompted you to have your family be there? Because, you know, it's just another meeting in a way. You know, we take awards in stride, but it's a big deal because it's an award given to you by your colleagues, but you had your family there. How did that?
I didn't know what to expect. So it was my first time going to it. I had no idea it was going to be as grand as it was and as professionally done as it was. So my wife and I talked about it. It was actually to her credit. She thought it would be a great idea to bring my son, and I thought it's a professional event. I don't know if it makes sense, but I strongly believe it left a memory in his brain that he won't forget. It was a really good bonding moment, and it was also great for my family to see and learn a little bit about what I do. You know, I had my mom there. It's hard to translate what we do to people that aren't in the industry or in
goodness,
IT,
yeah.
right? So just being able to be surrounded by a bunch of professionals that live and breathe was a really, really, really cool experience. And I'm really glad that I listened to my wife because she's usually steers us in the right direction, and we took the risk to bring my son, and it was a pleasant moment for all of us.
Very wonderful. Yeah, I need to remind myself of that when I'm using the controls in my car on the screen and my kids act like I have no idea what tech is. I have to do a big eye roll like they do because I'm like, do you even have any idea what mom does for a living? So speaking of family and balance, we're so driven. Most of us are A-type personalities and we get hyper-focused on work because we're high achievers. How do you find that balance? How do you get back to who you are, the grounding, and set your priorities? What is your method for that?
I think there's sort of like this ideal environment most of us aren't blessed to be in. So I'll give you two answers there. One of them is I always believe you should pick something you're passionate about, because if you do that, it doesn't really feel like work, right? You can blend your professional with your personal, and if you do it right and the environment supports it, then that's the best, right? But not all of us have that opportunity, or maybe we do at some point in our careers, but it's hard to sustain that throughout
So true.
your lifetime. So beyond that, I find travel is something that I really enjoy creating memories with my family, because it takes us out of our day-to-day environment, because you have tendencies when you stay at home. You know, this is my part of my routine to go do, and you always kind of slip back into that routine
So
when
true.
you're in this environment you're always
Yeah,
in.
we're attached to our devices.
Exactly, exactly. And so that's one thing that I always look back to. And anytime I have spare time, say I'm on a flight, I'll just pull up my photos. If I'm having a bad day and I'm having a stressful day, I'll just go through my photos, and it brings a smile to my face. And,
Right.
and it just reminds me of what's really important.
Right. Very true.
Yeah.
So I have to ask this follow-up now. Favorite trip or memory related to a trip?
Ooh, gosh, that's a tough question. Um, I am originally from India. My wife is from Goa. I'm from Delhi, so she's from a coastal town. I'm from a big city. It's not that I love the city or traveling this long distance to get there, but it's the family and the people that we're again going back to that element of it.
Right.
So I really enjoy that aspect of it, and just being able to pick up where you left off, and you get to see your cousins and you get to see your family. So that part of it is really cool, and it's great to connect families together. But selfishly, if I was to say put that out of it, where do I really enjoy? Where have I really enjoyed visiting would be Thailand. We went there a few years ago with my cousin and my brother, and I just love the people, the food. I felt welcome everywhere. It was just this really vibrant environment, and I'm a big foodie, and I love spicy food, and so it was just
You
just
can't
heaven
be
for
from
me.
Delhi and not be a foodie, right?
That's right. That's right. That's right. That's right.
That is so true. So, last parting words of advice, because I'm seeing you handle this phase of transition with being so grounded and having the right approach. Where most of us look at it as transition, you're almost looking at recalibration. So, any advice for other execs that are in the market, going through a transition, looking at or even looking at where to align themselves with long-term career-wise?
Yeah, one of the things I think a lot of executives can relate to, I know I certainly can, and you probably can, is I have worked since I was 14 years old, nonstop. I was a paper boy as my first job. I worked in sales. I did a little bit of everything, and I've never had a break.
Right.
And so if you find yourself in that position, really use it as an opportunity to do things, to create those memories, and really work on yourself.
Right.
Because in an executive role, you really find yourself married to your job in many ways, because anytime something can happen, and you need to have your phone on you. You need to be up to speed at any given time.
So
And
true.
so we have habits that form as a result. We have tendencies that form as a result. And so I would say step one is step back and just unwind yourself a little bit and really focus on yourself and say, I have been gifted this opportunity to now go do anything out of the world of opportunities to go do. And it doesn't have to be conventional. It could
Right.
be, maybe I don't want to be in this space. Maybe I don't want to be a C-suite. Maybe I want to go teach at a university. Maybe I want to write a book. Maybe I want to go be an entrepreneur.
Right.
And so I would just say, really use that as an opportunity to say, are you happy? And if you're happy, great, continue doing what you're doing.
Right.
But if it's not filling your bucket, then it's an opportunity to just be a little bit patient, work on yourself, create those memories, and then wait for that conviction
So true.
to know that this is what you're meant to go do, whatever that might be. And it may be the same, or it could be radically different.
You know in your gut when it's right.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, Varun, thank you so much for taking the time. It's been an honor to have you on this podcast. I have been taking mental notes. So if I ever have a healthcare question, you're the first call I'm making. You know that, right? So thank you.
Anytime. My pleasure.